Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, From Boring to Binge-Worthy, Creating Engaging Virtual Experiences. I'm Dan Toland, Director of Virtual Experiences here at Shiftology Communication. We're happy to have you all here today joining us. I know a lot of you are familiar faces that are joining us here, or familiar names at least through Zoom webinar, so it's nice to see you. And there are some of you who might be learning with us for the first time today as well. Regardless, we hope you find today's event useful and, of course, engaging as we explore ways to enhance engagement during your virtual events. I am joined today by my colleague, the dapper and always dazzling virtual engagement manager, Alex Miller. Alex, say hello, let everybody know how they're going to be communicating with us today.
Hey everyone, it's Alex here, virtual engagement manager with Shiftology Communication. We're going to be jumping in to some really fun stuff today, but before we do, I want to make sure that we have some of those housekeeping items out of the way so you know how to best communicate with us. So first thing is, this is a Zoom webinar, so you're muted and your camera is off for this. The chat box is closed at this point as well, but the good news is the Q&A is open, and then also we have the ability for you to raise your hand. So if you want to test it right now, you can as well. But if you click that raise your hand button, it'll show us that you're raising your hand. And then at some point too, we can unmute you. So you can use the Q&A box to communicate with us if you want to type questions, but if you want to verbally ask a question, you can raise your hand and then we'll let you know when we're going to unmute you, and you'll see a little button there that you can use to unmute yourself. There's also captions down at the bottom. If you need those or want those, you can click that and it'll turn it on for you to be able to see some transcriptions of today's event. We're going to move over to kind of give you a little bit of an overview. Dan's going to take it away there to give you a little bit about who we are and what we do.
Thanks, Alex. So just a brief overview. I know many of you know who we are, but if you're new here, just to share a little bit about who we are and what we do. Shiftology Communication is a full-scale marketing, PR, and communication firm based in Springfield, Ohio, but we're a largely remote workforce. I work in Findlay. Alex is down in Columbus. We have some folks scattered throughout the Springfield area. We have somebody over in Van Wert County as well. We primarily work in the fields of food and agriculture, health and wellness, and education. We have two arms to our organization, I guess, if you look at it that way. We have your traditional PR, marketing, branding firm that does all the traditional type of stuff that you would associate with a PR firm. And then we have our virtual arm as well, our virtual experiences team, which consists of myself and Alex. So we're a fully remote production team that provides complete service from conception and planning of events through testing, prep, rehearsal, and eventual production of each of our partners or clients' virtual experiences. Alex has a great hospitality background. He came to us in 2020 and added a lot to our team when it comes to hosting and engaging and creating efficiencies that really help take these to the next level. So a couple phrases that you'll hear today. Virtual experiences, we also call it VX for short. When we say that, we're referring to any style of a virtual event. So virtual field trips, conferences, webinars, summits, any sort of special events that you want to host virtually, where you're connecting with anybody from just a few people up to tens of thousands of people, which we've done before, and there's a lot of fun. We also host our virtual farm trips program, which many of you are familiar with. It's a customized turnkey and packaged production service for hosting unscripted, unfiltered, and unrestricted live virtual farm field trips for mainly K through 12 classrooms and schools, students throughout the country. So we connect them live with farms and farmers, industry experts right out there in their field doing their work for a live tour, live Q&A with students. To date, we've hosted 322 student-based virtual farm trips that have had approximately 39,000 teachers register approximately 825,000 students to go on live virtual farm field trips. They've been viewed in all 50 states and in many different countries throughout the world as well. But bottom line is, our main role is to be there from start to finish to make your experience as seamless as possible, both as hosts and for your attendees. We take the technical and logistical burdens out of the way to help you focus on what you do best, at connecting with your audience, sharing your stories and your messages. I like to tell folks that we pour the foundation, put up the studs, and let everybody decorate their programs how we see fit. while we provide guidance, expertise, and the confidence that you need to do that throughout the entire process. So with that all said, let's start diving into some of the meat of our webinar today. Today, we're mainly going to be focusing on engagement through Zoom webinar, which is how you're connected with us today. And Alex explained some of the ways you're going to communicate with us there. But I wanted to note there is a difference between Zoom meeting and Zoom webinar. Most of us, since the pandemic forced everybody to do things virtually, we're all used to this standard Zoom meeting format where people connect, all attendees connect with their microphones and cameras on. They all have control of them and can do whatever they want. And if you've been on these type of meetings where you start getting a lot of people involved, it can get a bit chaotic. People forget to mute themselves and start yelling at their dog or their cat or their kids. The screen randomly changes. People are doing things on the camera, other people are watching them and not paying attention to the content on the screen. There's a lot of things going on that can distract and make it not be a very professional style of event. And hosting Zoom meetings also tend to leave you more open to vulnerabilities for Zoom bombing and spamming and stuff like that. So there's some cases where we still do these standard Zoom meetings for some of our partners and clients where it's warranted, where it meets their goals, small group, and they need to have that type of interaction. But the vast majority of our virtual experiences and virtual farm trips are hosted using the Zoom webinar platform. It is an add-on to the standard Zoom meeting, but it provides much, much more control, customization, engagement options to really give a good polished live event. So, when you use a Zoom webinar, you kind of set who the panelists are going to be. So you connect ahead of time, prepare things and do that. Then you let your attendees connect in a view only mode where you're not getting all those distractions and stuff. So you'll notice today, as we are going through things, we're going to show a lot of different ways to engage using Zoom webinar, a lot of different presentation styles, some things you may know about, some things you may not. All right. So I'll also let you know we do use some other platforms from time to time to do virtual events. It really depends upon the goals of each event and who we're working with. But today we're zeroing in specifically on Zoom webinar since we use that the majority of the time. So that said, I'm going to turn it over to Alex to share the objectives for the day, and we'll start diving into things.
Hey there, it's me again. I'm going to go over some of what we're going to be talking about today. So thanks, Dan, for kind of that good introduction as well. The first thing before I share the secrets of what we're going to be talking about today is to let you know that these topic areas are super detailed and can be, there's a lot of information and a lot of different features with Zoom. What our goal is today is to share, very scrape the surface, kind of get into some of them, show you some of them, but we're not going to be able to completely explore all of them because there's so many different options. So we picked out some of our favorites, some really cool engagement methods we like. If there are any questions, or I should say when there are questions, drop them in the Q&A box and we'll get those answered, or raise your hand and we can find a good time to answer that. And then afterwards, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out. We're always oddly obsessed with talking about Zoom. So if you ever want to chat about Zoom features and different things, we can. So we're going to be looking at kind of three main things for today's session is the Zoom built-in features. So that's features within Zoom. Also, we're going to look at the third-party tools, so using other tools outside of Zoom to integrate with Zoom or kind of boost some engagement there. And then we're going to be looking at your talent. So the speaker, the moderator, the planning and preparation that goes into that can really change the tone of the event. So we're going to start with Zoom built-in features, and to do that, I'm not a big screen share person, especially when we're talking about Zoom in-house features. So we're going to be looking at three. The first three, another three we're going to be looking at is the polls and quizzes, the in-session branding, and then immersive view. So the first one we're going to look at is polling. So let me launch a poll for you to kind of fill out as we talk about this. So we have kind of adapted, and Zoom's adapted to allow advanced polling versus your standard select one or select multiple answers here. So we put some of those together for you to test it out yourself. You can see here the first question, what do you think are the two most popular movies or shows among our attendees? So we did a little poll for you within the beginning of, or within registration for you to be able to answer that. So we want to see your answers there. That's more of a standard polling question. But then you can see as we move down is we have kind of it's called a rank order question, which is a true or false with a bunch of different submissions there. I'm excited to see some of those as well. Favorite Zoom feature, Zoom has launched a fill in the blank or a type answer, so you don't necessarily have to use the chat. You can still poll people and get open-ended responses. And then the Likert scale or the rating scale down at the bottom there, you can see that's a different style. So these are all really different ways to kind of enhance polling, which is still within Zoom. So we wanted to share a few of those. We have a few more polls answers coming in. And while that is finishing, I see a few more finishing. We have a question that just came in about how using polls in virtual field trips if it's an entire class watching on one screen. So it's a little more specific of a question, but the big thing that we like to do with that is make sure that the questions, so if a teacher's watching or projecting on their screen the class and you launch a poll, we like to just make sure to set aside enough time so they have time to answer those questions, or even just turn on some background music and let them answer the questions so the teacher has a time to communicate with their students before just submitting their polling there. It looks like most of us have finished the polling. I see another question about going back. Once you submit, there isn't a way to go back. So hopefully you got them all in there that first time. And then this one was 4 questions. So if you might have to scroll down to see all 4, which it looks like a handful of you did. So you can do multiple questions or single questions. So this one was a little bit longer of a poll for you. I'm going to share the results of what people were saying here. The big one that you can do is that first question is we set answers. So Yellowstone and The Crown were top poll or top movies and TV shows. So if you're not watching that yet, time to get on that. You can see some of the true and false there. I was excited to see if people thought, oh, it's a tie if pineapple belongs on pizza or not. Ooh. And then let's see, true or false, it's 45, it's below 45 degrees where I am. True, 7 of you said that. I'm sorry. Here in Columbus, Ohio, let me check again. It's 46. So we're just above that mark. And the last but not least, I wanted to see some other people's favorite Zoom feature is people said video settings with background breakout rooms, polls, a lot of different things coming in. So that's great for polls. Like we said, there's a lot we can say about polls and a lot of these features that we're going to be working on or showing you today, but we want to not bore you with all the details. We want to make sure you're excited for it as well. So you can see there is just how engaging polls can be when you use them, polling, using those question and answers and integrating those in throughout. The second one that you might have noticed is a little bit different as you joined in. And Dan, I'm just going to bring you up on screen as well so you can see, but we have it's going to be in-session branding, and these name tags are part of that in-session branding. So in-session branding consists of 3 things within Zoom. Webinar, and this is again a webinar feature only, is a name tag which is below us that is customizable and you can edit it live time as well. You can also push a virtual background to all of your speakers. So if you're like, hey, we want a virtual background behind everybody here, you can do that. And then the last one is what's called a wallpaper. So if you see those cool triangles and circles behind our video screens with our logo in it, that's a wallpaper that we can now paste up there basically. And you can either use it for a logo or just to kind of get a change of feel. These can help engage your attendees just with being able to see who's talking. Again, if you have a larger panel that when they're talking, it's like, who was that one? I see their name. and you can brand it a little bit more, so your company's colors and the feel you're going for. So we've looked at the polling, the in-session branding. The last one is actually a really fun one, which is called Immersive View, that we haven't seen a ton of people use yet, but it's a feature within Zoom where you can basically pull multiple video sources into one video. So Dan and I are going to hop in by a fire here, sitting here roasting by the fire. So you can do this. Zoom has some preset features like this one where you can pull in here. So if Dan and I are just having a meeting, we're like, hey, we want to chat, we can do this. Let's say it is a classroom style where you're just kind of talking and want to work together as a class. We can also pull it into a class like this. So you can have up to 25 participants. Let's say Dan and I don't get along well. We can move ourselves around or be like, Dan, you need to be a little bit bigger, change some things, so you can kind of customize where people are, where they're sitting. And then if you want to get real creative, you can actually upload your own. So let's say after this webinar, Dan and I are like, let's talk about how that webinar went. We can go and do that over a cocktail at a virtual bar where we can put ourselves right behind the bar and we can take turns playing bartender, make ourselves all different sizes. So you can kind of see there. So this is a really cool feature because if you have a panel, if you have a board meeting, anything like that, you can bring people all in together in one spot. The one thing that why we don't see a lot of people use this is I would say that you cannot share your screen while also in immersive view. So it's kind of one or the other, and a lot of people love sharing their screen. So if it's a little bit more of just a talking or a low visual one, you can kind of do this. You can see I threw the Shiftology logo up in the top corner again. So you can kind of brand it throughout there. So that was a lot for the in-session or in webinar branding, I guess, or Zoom. There we go. That's what we're calling it, the Zoom features. We're going to start transitioning over to the next section here. And while Dan gets that pulled up, we're going to check in for some questions as well. So if you have any questions or if anybody's raising their hand, we can unmute you, but it doesn't look like it at this point. So we're going to move on to Dan's section, which is going to be using that third-party integration. He's also going to be using another built-in Zoom feature. So let me get myself out of the way here. So he's going to be using a Zoom feature called slides as background. So you can take your slides and actually use it as a background. And this is all built in through Zoom too. We're not talking about that as much today, but here's a little plug and you'll see how it's done. So go ahead, Dan.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, once again, just another way that you can present things differently, control how things are viewed using Zoom. So you can actually be a part of your presentation slides, which is really nice if you want to point out features or do anything fun with yourself within your slide deck. So in addition to some of the built-in Zoom tools that Alex was talking about, and honestly, he just kind of scraped the surface. There's a lot more we can do within Zoom as well. We just had to narrow it down to some to keep it within a certain amount of time today. But there's many third-party tools, services, websites, et cetera, that you can use to really enhance engagement through Zoom. You can really use these to increase reach and make your engagement more fun, interactive, and real time for your audience, for their participation as well. And one of the great things about what we do with our live events is we try to make the audience as much a part of the program as possible. Once that audience sees and feels that they can interact, they can be a part of the production, or they can help direct the action or the conversation, the more buy-in they have, the more they enjoy it, the more they'll come back for more. So I'm going to share and discuss 3 tools, just narrowed it down to 3 that we've used that we enjoy, that really make engagement more fun, interactive, really kind of increase your reach. And that's photo sharing, live quizzing, and live streaming. So looking at photo sharing, there are a bunch of websites and services out there that allow you to create photo galleries, video galleries, what have you. But one that we're pointing out today that we really like is QuickShare. We've used this a number of times for various events, but what this does is create a private event picture gallery. I will say a lot of these tools and services do have a bit of an added on cost, but what you get in return engagement, it's worth it, we think. But this allows you to create a private event picture gallery that you can have your attendees submit photos and videos to during your live events that you can then turn around and share directly within your live event as it's happening. So you go on the site, you set up your live gallery, and then it will give you a phone number or a code that people will use to simply text. So they use their phone, snap their photo or video. They can even send it to this number. They can even put a little caption with it if they want. It goes to you on the backside. You can approve it to go onto your photo gallery, your video gallery, and then you can share it during your event to showcase what people are doing during your event. So one example for how we use this was American Dairy Association Indiana in a partnership with the Indiana Academy of Nutritionists and Dietetics. That's a mouthful. I'm glad I said that right, doing that. But they had a pizza party as part of their annual meeting where they delivered pizza kits to registrants ahead of time. And then they had a live pizza making demo, and then families were able to make pizzas, make their own creations, and share things as they were doing it during the event. And they created this live photo gallery and video gallery, which they can then share during the presentation. Again, pulling in people, making them a part of your program, and showing and showcasing what they're doing and increasing that engagement in real time from their devices in their hands while they're participating in your event. We also did this with Florida Dairy for a Fuel Up to Play 60 NFL. I think it was a kickoff type of initiative where kits were sent to various schools, and then they could showcase what they were doing with the stuff in their kit during that kickoff event as well. So, and one great thing about doing this as well, it's not only great for engagement, but look at all this user-generated content that you can use after your event as well to share and show this on social media and things like that to showcase your engagement. I do see a question there from Shelly. Can you approve photos and text before they get shared? Yes, you certainly can. You can set that so you can set which ones are going into that gallery as they come in, for sure. The second thing I'm going to talk about is some live quizzing. You know, we already talked about some of these great polls, advanced polling features, gave an example of some of that through Zoom, but it's still kind of at times a rather mundane process to go through the standard polling that Zoom has built into it. So what we like to do sometimes is pull in some different quizzing type of platforms that make it more fun and engaging for your audience. So two of those that we've used, and two that are pretty well known, particularly in the education area, is Kahoot and Quizzes. So these two platforms operate very, very similarly. You go on the website and you create your quiz. It can be as many questions as you want. You can throw in images, videos. You can select different options where they can just select one, they can select multiple, or all the above. And so you create this quiz or poll, and then what you will do is you would screen share it, and it will provide a code. So all they have to do is go to the website like Kahoot or Quizzes on their phone. It says enter in the code, they put it in, and then they put in their screen name and they're entered in to your quiz. So you can see on your end how many are getting in there, make sure everybody's in there, then you can start your quiz. And it's really neat because it is a timed quiz. So each question pops up and you can set a level of time that question's up there. And your audience gets higher point values for answering quickly and correctly. After each question, it shows you a really neat interactive leaderboard. It shows people who are on fire moving up the leaderboard, or people who are cold. And so you go through your quiz, and then at the end of it, it will reveal the top three quizzers, I guess, quiz takers, and your winners. It's really neat. It makes a game out of this. It makes a game out of learning and retaining the information. It makes it fun and engaging for everybody that's involved. And you could also make it extra fun by putting a little incentive in there by giving a prize pack to the winner or top 3 participants or something like that, where you would communicate with them after they won to get their information to send them their prize packages. But we've done this multiple times. It works very well and seamlessly through Zoom. A great way to increase engagement while having fun cementing your messages along the way. And then the third thing I'll talk about will be live streaming. I guess it's not really a tool as much as a strategy to use. Before the pandemic, we really didn't do much live streaming. But once the pandemic hit and everybody was in their homes at school, we had to learn how to do these virtual farm trips to reach people where they're at, and all these virtual experiences reaching people where they're at. So we started doing live streaming. Zoom does allow live streaming to one platform and one platform only. You can select what platform that is, but you can only go to one at one time. And for most people, that's YouTube or Facebook. However, if you want to go to multiple channels to reach more people where they're at, we use a tool called Restream. It's restream.io, and you can set that up to say, I'm going to have this event. I want to go to these particular channels all at the same time, and then you can connect it to Zoom and go to live stream your event. So there's a lot of benefits to doing that. You're reaching people where they're at, you're expanding your reach, but one of the great things about it is it provides a really good recording of your event exactly as it was produced. So if you're using Zoom and doing like the regular Zoom recording of this, when you go back to watch that recording or share it with folks, it's going to say, do you want to watch this in presenter mode, or do you want to watch it in speaker mode or gallery mode? And it's kind of a pain in the butt. It's disjointed, not all that fun to do that. But recording to YouTube, Facebook, it records it exactly as we're producing it using Zoom webinars. Nobody has to switch between anything. It shows it exactly how you want the program to look and feel. It also provides an immediate and available recording once it's done that you can share with everybody. You can leave it out there on those sources. You can get live engagement and comments during the live stream, but it also will extend the shelf life of that program that you've recorded out there for folks to not only discover in the future, but to help keep it out there and expand your message further. So that covers just 3 of my favorite like third-party type of tools that we're using. So I'm going to go ahead and take down my screen here, see if we have any questions we can answer, and let Alex prepare for the next portion of things.
Yeah, we do have a question that came in with Joan about Mentimeter in Zoom, and I've used Mentimeter probably 4 or 5 years ago in a previous position, and it does kind of do the same thing. I would say it's probably closest to like quizzes or Kahoot. The big thing with quizzes and Kahoot, and the reason we've used those more, is because those are already built into schools, and a lot of schools use those. So I would say Mentimeter is kind of that equivalent if you are on a professional level, or there's a few different items there. So I haven't used it personally in a long time. I don't think Dan has either, unless he's been doing some secrets behind my back.
No.
But no, I think that's a lot of it there. The other thing I was going to mention kind of about the live streaming that Dan was talking about is, as you can tell, we're live streaming this right now. The other really cool thing about live streaming then is that it's available right away. So with that recording, and we're recording this, so you're able to see it, but right after we're done, it'll be available on YouTube. And people can rewind, live time to rewind and go back. So it provides a nice recording, and it's really instantaneous there, which is fantastic. So we're going to start moving into our next section. Before I do, I want to make sure everybody's doing okay out there. We've been talking about a lot. This isn't for a question, but I want you to raise your hand if you are doing okay or still with us, to make sure that your raise hand button works as well. Okay, it looks like people are, oh yeah, good. Not too many people are sleeping. Awesome. I can see that. Sweet, I'll lower them all for you, so we don't have to call out people who didn't. No, I'm just kidding. We won't call anybody out. So we're going to do kind of that check-in there, but I want to kind of touch on what we've already chatted about so far. Let me get myself up on the screen for you. So far, we've looked at the Zoom built-in features, how some of those can build that engagement. The next one we've looked at are those third-party tools with Dan, kind of seeing what are a few of those that can integrate and really be able to take those events to the next level, and something different. I feel like we're always searching for something different with these events, so it's not just that same old Zoom webinar, where it's just, okay, I'm going to another one. So something to kind of spruce it up, make your attendees feel engaged. Third-party tools help with that. And the last one we're going to be looking at is the speaker planning and prep, or if you want to call them talent or your moderator. We're going to be kind of looking at all of them there. Really anybody that's speaking, whether that's a moderator of a virtual farm tour, a host of an event, your actual presenter, a keynote speaker, kind of looking at some of the things there. I'm a huge Office fan, so this is Dwight getting ready for some stuff, I guess. We're going to be looking at what I designated as the 3 E's for speaker planning and prep is the environment, so what the attendees see, the energy, what attendees are feeling or what they feel, and then the expectations, what the attendees know or what they may need to know. So we're going to look at this environment first. With a few tips. So to look at your environment, the first one we want to look at with environment is your video. So does your computer have a high enough quality video? Is it blurry? Is it broken? Is it not working? So looking at that video, also with video height, making sure everything's kind of proportional. So you don't want me presenting if kind of only looking at my forehead if I was down this low. So making sure that that video is in front of you, you can look straight at it, talk to it, and that can really help engage your attendees. Another thing that kind of hits on video is where you're at in the video proportion wise. So like you can tell, Dan and I are both standing today. We before we had desks that go up and down, I would stack books up in boxes and it would look really weird if you were looking at the computer. But we try to always stand if we're presenting, because if I was presenting in person, I would be standing by a podium, on a stage, behind a podium, something there that gets me naturally able to move. And sometimes I like to do like little happy dances if I'm feeling good. So that's a way we can do that using our video to make sure we're all within the video there. The other one's lighting. I have a nice light behind. As you can tell, I can turn it on and off or really bright, depending on how you kind of want. So the lighting, if you have the luxury of having some different kind of studio lighting, that's great. But the big thing is don't sit in front of a window with the window behind you. That'll wash you out. So just do some tests, make sure the lighting's coming in good, that you're not basically being a little silhouette within your video screen. The third one is sound and background noise, making sure some way that your audio sounds good. Dan and I both use AirPods because they're nice and easy to be able to connect. We also have Zoom, which has built-in background noise canceling. So that's really nice. Some other devices might have that too. So really just looking at what sound you have and making sure the sound coming in is crisp and clear for your attendees. And then the last one is distraction. So there's sometimes where different outfits, costumes are great to wear, but sometimes a flashy shirt might distract from your message, or stuff behind you. Always keeping in mind what's behind you and what's around you so it's not distracting, which we'll touch on here in just a second more. But really looking at these four, I think it gives away that, or it starts those attendees thinking about it when they first see it, of like, okay, their video's looking good, the lighting's nice, I can hear them, I can see them, and it gives them no reason to kind of be like, oh, this webinar is gonna suck. They feel like it's feeling good at the beginning, which we'll also talk about kind of that energy. So let's get into a little bit of a spot the difference between the picture. So if you're wondering who this handsome man is, it's me. I took a little picture here so we can see a little difference. So I'll go ahead and circle some things in my head that's distracting. It looks like I was getting ready for Christmas. Beside me, I have Christmas cards that I was writing. My dog is curious of what's happening too inside the cabinet. I opened up a gift that I got from my brother and just set the box behind me. There's an extra plant there because I didn't know where to put it. The background, it's cropped off. It doesn't feel like it's full. So there's a lot happening behind there. Slouch down, that kind of, with the energy and environment, it feels a little bit more like I just jumped on a call really quick and didn't necessarily care about the presentation. Lighting's a little dim, so if you look at this one in comparison, I first off look a lot happier. I feel like that's the secret between like before and after pictures. You have to smile. But then you can also see, like, you can see the two shelves. There's a little bit of branding back there with the Shiftology and Virtual Farm Trips logo board. Not as much stuff in the background, just kind of feeling a little bit better. So it's really that first impression that I guess we're looking at for that environment, of making sure that you're not distracting your attendees too much, which then will disengage them or give them something else to talk about versus the message that you are trying to share. So that that one was still just the first E for environment. We kind of touched on some things with energy and expectations, but for energy and expectations, I'm going to go ahead and take that slide share down because, again, we're focusing on the presenter versus those slides. So that energy, when we look at energy, it's really talking about how we set the tone for the event. Like you can tell here is why I'm standing, I'm like punching at the air and bouncing around, but that energy of being able to set the tone at the beginning, being ready to start the webinar when the webinar starts. I feel like there's been some really big webinars that I've been to that it's kind of like they start the webinar and you jump in and it's just two people kind of looking around like, hey, I think we're live. Hold on, let me go grab that off the copier. Let me do. So we like to do our countdown timers at the beginning to kind of get people in, get them settled in before we get too far in. And then also, just once we start, is come at it and be excited. We're excited for you to be here, so we want you to be excited to be here as well. So really that energy there. And the next one's going to be talking about interacting with audience, and I see there's a question, so let's see what question there is. I think Karen has a question, which, Karen, you should have the ability to unmute if you want to pop up and ask a question now, unless it was an accidental hand raise. Let's see, Karen, it should ask now to unmute if you can see that. There we go. Nope, no question, I guess. Well, we'll hold off. If there is a question, feel free to raise your hand again. But it's just that, is interacting with the audience. So like you saw there, is being able to see different things going on. It takes a little bit, and as you can tell probably here, is there's multiple screens that we have, which makes it a little bit easier to be able to do that. And then Dan and I are also running virtual events every day, so we are used to kind of a few things happening, but really looking at that interaction with the audience and making sure those attendees feel like they can have a voice as well. So having the Q&A up and kind of doing it as you go. Same with the raise your hand feature, checking in that way. Another energy kind of way is using that pre-polling. So we use some pre-polling, or in your registration, we ask you what movie you like, and then being able to tie that into the event to make it a full circle. Using chat when you're talking about Q&A chat, using the attendees' names, it really makes them feel like, oh, they're actually reading my question, not just a list of questions that they have here. And the other part with that we like to say is engage as soon as you can, really just because if attendees see that you are answering questions and actually taking them live time, they're more willing to put them in right away versus holding them all till the end or not asking them. So usually, and Joan is on here that does some fantastic Break for Health webinars, is with our panelists there that we have, is usually by the end is the questions start coming in and flowing in. And once we're done, everybody's like, this was so much fun, but we kind of weren't in our comfort zone until the end of it. We were like really bonding and having a lot of fun, and attendees started asking questions. So we always try to find ways to how we can get that started at the beginning so the whole webinar has that feel. So that's really easily done by just making sure you set aside time to say, what questions are there? Look at the polls, look at the question and answers, interact with people to make them feel like they are really engaged in it. So we looked at energy and environment so far. The last one is expectations, which as a event planner and producer, I'm all about knowing expectations and knowing what's going to happen. Even going out to dinner, it's like I need to know where I'm going to park. I need to know what's on the menu, all that. So I take that and look at it as events. So that starts with pre-communication. So as you saw probably in your pre-communication, we always say your cameras and microphones will be disabled for this event. If you have any questions, email this person to kind of start that communication pattern. Then once we got to the event, before we did anything else, besides introduce ourselves, we set those expectations of like, here's what you need to know. We want you to interact. We want you to be involved. But if this is your first time, we want you to know how to do it. If you've been on here before, maybe you'll learn something, or maybe this is just a refresher, but we want everybody to have those clear expectations. And really that expectation afterwards too. So you'll see here in a little bit, as we're drawing to a close, there'll be some clear expectations of what we want at the end of the webinar to make sure that you know and you feel like the webinar, okay, it's over, I've done what I need to do, and kind of move on from there. That also goes into if anybody has extra things as an ask after a webinar. So it's like, hey, we're giving away a prize if you fill out our survey. We have CEUs for this webinar or something. That can be something that people want those expectations. So when should I get a follow-up? Is this recorded? All that information, you need to clearly create those expectations. Dan, how are we doing?
I'm great.
You're great? Okay, good. So
Yes.
I'll bring Dan back up, and then I'll get our slides back up to kind of go. So the last one I just looked at were the speaker presentation and preparation. So a big recap, while we're recapping this, put all the questions you have in the Q&A feature, and we'll start getting to those and asking those, since we have some time set aside for those.
I'd say ask any
recap.
questions about anything, not just what we covered today. If there's any other questions, this is time that you have with us, and we're willing to chat about anything. So within reason.
Yeah. The recap we have overall, the Zoom built-in features. So we looked at the Zoom built-in features, we looked at third-party tools, and then we looked at the speaker planning and prep, with also a reminder that is very high level. So as you saw, both Dan and I, we started kind of veering away from some of it, or getting down in the details, because we really enjoy this stuff. So we're always willing to talk about all these different topics, but we wanted to make sure to not lead you too far into our crazy minds just yet. We have some questions coming in. The first one, Joan has a question about how do you find and turn all these apps on in Zoom? That's all in your Zoom settings. You'll find a lot of these: Immersive View, Advanced Polling, and in-session branding. In-session branding is a webinar specific, but I believe Advanced Polling and Immersive View are both meeting and webinar. So you can find those in there and turn them on and be able to control those from there. Another great question. I'll take this next one, Dan, about from Nicole Volk with, hey Nicole, how's it going? With how do you make something that's pre-recorded engaging and interactive? So we talked about that a lot before the webinar, and we had a lot of trouble, or a lot of struggles narrowing this down, but that's a really good one. Of people are like, well, it's pre-recorded, it can't be engaging. Um, we'll probably host another webinar that might be kind of on that topic, but I'll give you a little teaser of what I like to do. So we have methods to be able to showcase that. So I like to record an engaging webinar and then show it at a training. So we might do that in the future, but then you can kind of see how it can still be engaging. So we have different softwares that allows us to bring different things within our videos. So that countdown timer that you saw at the beginning, I'll pull it up again. I'll shut down the music's off there. So that countdown timer is actually coming right in throughout my video. So we can get as creative as we need to. So let's see what I have on my computer and see if I can pull something else in here for you. But you can do really any sort of video that you can think of and be able to bring it in. So let's do this for an example of a virtual farm tour we went on with American Dairy Association Indiana, part of their manure flush system in the barn. So this was a pre-recorded video, but as you can see, it comes through as if it was 100% live. And it runs a little bit smoother than it would if you're sharing a screen. So there's ways to think about it ahead of time of pre-recording things. Let me pull it back up to the other manure flush, me. And there ways to bring it in and pre-record, and then we can bring it through. As you can tell, like the name tags, that's one of the small details. You have to take the name tag off, so you don't have that name tag in. So there's a few tips and tricks with that to be able to make that happen as well.
I think a lot, Alex, as well, when you're talking about pre-recorded content, particularly if you're making something that you know that you're going to have live components as well. It always helps to think, what am I going to be wearing the day of this event? What time of day is the event going to be and stuff like that? So you make that pre-recorded content fit that. You don't want to record something in the afternoon, be like, oh, good afternoon, and you're in a sweater, but the event's in the morning and you're going to play that and you're going to be in a t-shirt and it's morning time. So you always want to think about those things. What's that environment going to be like? What's that going to look and feel like? What should I be wearing that's going to match what I'm going to be wearing the day of the live event, stuff like that. So there's a lot of pre-recorded type of stuff. A lot of tips and tricks, like Alex said, to doing that. And we've done a lot of events where maybe we'll have a pre-recorded welcome, and people won't even know that it's pre-recorded. And if we don't tell them, the way that we are able to seamlessly bring in video and stuff like that. So there's a lot of tips and tricks that we use with the software that we have and the know-how to really, you can do a fully pre-recorded event and not even know it's really pre-recorded if you allow the right type of engagement.
Like Dan's saying, it takes a little bit of, I would call it fibbing versus lying. It just takes somewhere, like you don't have to say this is recorded, but you also don't need to verbally say it in the recording of like, okay, when you watch the recording, you'll see as you just talk as if you're live. Same with polls, is you can still have polls launch at a certain time and just kind of be like, oh yeah, those are great answers. Oh, most people are saying yes to this, and not actually like go as in depth to the polls. And we have some too where they'll still have the Q&A and type, so you can pre-record it, but then still be there to respond to Q&A. So if it's a time limit, you have speakers where it's a time limit. We've done it for different conferences and events that you can kind of fib, or you can pretend without having to point it out, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Dan, we have that other question coming in. While that other question is coming up and doing that, I want to make sure we capture a little bit more information. So like we said, is the expectations the full. Instead of sending you out to another survey, we're going to launch a poll here that we just want to hear kind of how you think today went. We have still 10 minutes of time, so feel free to stick on. This doesn't mean you have to leave, but we're just going to launch this so you can fill it out at your leisure. If you do launch it or finish it, you can exit out or just drag it off to the side. But Dan, I'll let you go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I see we have two questions there, one from Jill and one from Allie. Jill, yours is the simpler one to answer, so I'm going to go with that one first. For optimal audience engagement, what is the recommended length for a webinar, assuming it's an adult audience? I think you're pretty much looking at it right now, where we go about 45 minutes, stretch a little bit, maybe for Q&A type of content. And That's typically what we try to do with our older school audiences as well. Younger kids, we try to keep a half hour or less. Older kids, 45 minutes, because that's typically the length of a class program or a classroom for older students. But for adults, once you start tipping past that 1 hour point, if you're not including any breaks or variety in what you're doing, that's probably the best length you want to go with. Now, if you're making it part of a bigger program, that's part of a bigger half day type of thing where people know that's happening, that's where you bring in different breaks, different varieties of engagement. We do a lot of things with dairy groups where we'll do kind of a presentation in the morning with folks, then we'll take a break and do a live farm tour, then they'll come back and do a Q&A and stuff like that. So it's kind of broken up for them to do that. So it really depends on what type of event you're hosting, what that optimal time is. But if you're just hosting a standard webinar like this, 45 minutes to an hour is probably getting there. What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, Dan, you hear me say it all the time too, is there's Zoom fatigue out there. And I think Zoom fatigue is more based off of boring events. But if you have engaging events, I think that's where you can push it. So it really depends on your audience. But I also say, and I've heard it said that you can sit down and watch 10 episodes of Netflix shows because it's engaging and it has you captured. So it depends on really what you're doing. If it's a webinar, like Dan said, it's great like this, give the information. But if it is like a workshop or something where it's like we're going to jump into group work, smaller work, it really depends on how engaging you make it overall. Yeah,
shoot, we aren't even talking about whiteboards and breakouts and all those other sorts of things that you can incorporate into meetings and even webinar cases too. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways, depending on what you want to do, we help find the ways to make them most engaging. So, Allie has a question about what is the best way to juggle multiple speakers in an off-site location like farm tours in separate parts of the farm. Allie, I'm going to give you the ability to talk to us if you want to expand upon that a little bit there. I know we do a lot of farm tours where we've had multiple cameras and multiple locations on the farm. A lot of it is, the planning and logistics that go into it. So for those of you who aren't familiar, what we do with our virtual farm tours is, like I said, we're a remote production team. So Alex and I are producing these from our homes, and we work with these organizations to go out there with, let me see if I have one here, Alex. Yeah, I do. A mobile gimbal. They use to steady their video out there with a phone, and then a really good pair of noise canceling Bluetooth headsets that they use. So, and we spend a lot of our time practicing with folks and rehearsing things. But if you're in separate parts of the farm, I mean, first and foremost, you got to test everything. So we do connectivity tests with people out there using the devices they're going to use on the farm to make sure the connectivity, A, works, but B, it sounds good. The biggest thing when it comes to having multiple speakers on the farm, particularly if they're all headset together, is not having them standing too close together. I hate to say it, but social distancing works really well for these things, where if you're standing 5-6 feet apart, that microphone when somebody's speaking isn't going to get picked up. Their voice isn't going to get picked up on that other person's microphone. But if you're in separate parts of a farm or on separate farms, maintaining one speaker in each location should work just fine. If you're doing a situation where you have to have multiple people together in the same location, Alex, you've had a little bit of experience doing that with some of our other dairy groups that we work with. I think American Dairy Association Northeast used a lapel, and they actually had their moderator, their host, there on site next to the farmer. How did that work?
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of it that we can talk more offline too, just because there's a lot of variances depending on who needs to hear who. But as Dan's saying, it is all basically they'll have to usually have a separate audio line. And if we want to combine two of those questions too, it could be a good time to look at is there a segment that we could pre-record live or pre-record and then part of the movie magic, we have that in while you're transitioning to another location or going to do something else. So a lot of what Dan said, maybe some of that movie magic or pre-recording, but then it's really managing those audio channels and some different technology, depending on if the presenters on site need to hear or not is the big thing.
Allie, did you want to expand further upon that at all? Did that hit upon what you were looking for? Or?
Yeah, thanks, guys. It did. And I also liked the idea of a little bit more of the pre-recorded stuff. I know we've tried like having the multiple audio inputs on the farm, and with mixed success.
Yeah.
But I guess the other part is just, do you guys see a lot more engagement with doing that? Like, is it worth the extra trouble of having those multiple lines, or trying to have multiple speakers in a location? Is it worth all of the hassle to get that better engagement?
Yeah, I think a lot of that depends upon what you're trying to get across and what you're trying to show. So if you're trying to show a bunch of facets of the farm, it makes sense to have people out there in multiple locations. So you're not traveling and walking between things as you're doing stuff. So you can quickly switch between stuff, and having that pre-recorded content as well to switch to. I do think multiple camera angles, multiple facets work well. We do a lot of tours where they'll have two cameras on site. So one is focused on being on the farmer the whole time, and the other one's roaming around and just getting close-ups of everything and showing stuff we're talking about. That provides a lot of visual variety. So when you think about engagement, it's not necessarily getting your audience to respond to you, but keeping them, like Alex said, Netflixed, entertained. So being able to switch up those views. If we got a camera that's roaming around showing an animal doing something that's kind of funny looking or something like that, hey, I'm going to switch to that and show that, because the people watching that are going to enjoy that. And as long as we can still hear the person talking, the more visual variety we can show, the better.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, Dan, kind of what you're mentioning there. As far as we've thought about it a lot as we've tried to find perfect ways to do it, and we don't have, like Dan said, a perfect way to put two people right next to each other without them hearing themselves in their ears and all of that. And I really take a step back and look too, is that style looks really good in my head to like pre-record. So if you can have somebody walking beside there. But then I look at too is what the purpose of a lot of either a virtual farm trip is or an event like that. It's usually the host and then the talent or the farmer or the person with them. And what our goal always is to amplify that message of the farmer or that main speaker. So when you are trying to get two people in the shot, it sometimes feels like you're trying to do 50-50 of like, oh, we want to get this person and this person, where really we want to put the focus on your main speaker for that event. So when they're separated, you can do that really easy, because you can have one on one camera, one on another one, or one offsite, anything like that, where they can kind of have their station set up and their station set up. So it can really take away some of those technical issues. And like we kind of talked about with the energy or environment, is that people recognize those technical issues. We still see it, even if it's a little blip. Somebody will say, well, the tour was great, but the connectivity cut off for a second. It's like, well, that could have been your internet as well. But anything we can do to cut down those is huge, because if that happens, it's just kind of taking away from your message as well. And we take as many steps from rehearsing to connectivity test and to joining live to make sure we can cut down all those.
Yep. I don't see any other questions open at the moment. If you have any last minute questions, feel free to raise your hand. We can unmute you if you want to chat with us, or drop something in there real quick. Alex, it looks like we got most of our closing poll questions taken care of. We'll leave that open. For those of you who have not completed that closing poll, please feel free to do so. We'll wait a second to see if any final questions come in. If not, maybe Alex, you can pop up a screen there.
We'll go ahead and put our closing slides up here for you. But if there are questions, put it in. We'll stick on for a little bit and we can type a response. We also we'll follow up with everybody with, we can send you the presentation if you want, and then also the link to the recording so you can watch it over and over or on repeat if you get bored sometime. I didn't say a lot of funny jokes this time, so maybe next one I'll say more funny jokes. But we really do appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to hang out with us. And we really look forward to chatting with everybody and seeing what cool virtual events everybody comes up with.
Yep. On our slide there, we have our emails. Deb says she does not see the closing poll, Alex. I'm not sure if it's hidden on your screen. Deb, if you're on Oh, that's not funny. Alex, you want to take care of that and see if we can get that handled. If not, we thank you for joining us. Our email addresses are there at the bottom there if you want to get in touch with us. Everybody have a wonderful day and have a happy holiday season. I hope Santa brings you everything you want.